Hello, this is Ben Payton, and you are listening to The Bill Podcast. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, McGoldrickWatchRepairs.com, and Misty Moon Events. For over 60 hours of exclusive The Bill-related content, including reunion highlights, cast and crew commentaries, reaction videos, pilgrimage location videos, off-the-beat bonus podcasts, and much more. Join the investigation from £2.49 a month at patreon.com/The Bill Podcast.
We had a different producer who came in for a short period of time and then went, and then the show started to lose its angle, specific angle. And Michael Chapman was really strict with that. And I'm really grateful that he had a very clear path with it. And the other producers, the associate, a different producer, Pat Sands, who was Samantha Bond's mother.
Yeah.
Who played Moneypenny back in the Brosnan days, and Richard Hanford and Michael Cocker. Oh, he's one of our directors. But, I really liked that, because I think when you've got tight boundaries with something, you can go further with it. Whereas if it's a free-for-all in terms of a style and what it's really about. And I, with the greatest respect to the Bill as a whole entity and love for it, because it was part of my life for nearly 7 years. And I chose to leave it. So, because I went off to do this play, and then I came back and I thought, actually, it's time to go.
Right, okay.
And then I just did a little bit of Band of Brothers and things, just other things. And didn't really go where I wanted it to go in my career, but I don't know if I really had any idea where I wanted it to go. But actually right now, if I could do half a dozen more plays, I'd be a happy man, because I do like doing it, I like the process. I love the rehearsal period and stuff. Of course, if there's TV or whatever, of course I'd still like to do it. But it doesn't have the same I will cry my eyes out if I don't get a role importance in it.
Well, to me, it was class, looking at the programme and seeing the rehearsal photos, and I hope I'm right in this observation that you wore a tie because you knew you'd be wearing a dog collar, and you wore a beret because you knew you'd be wearing an army hat in rehearsal. And I hope I'm right in observing that. And it's just getting in the moment as best as you can before you've got the...
Yeah, that's very Drama Centre, because Christopher Fettis' Drama Centre idea is things aren't props and costumes aren't costumes. You're wearing garments or things that can get as close to whatever, just to find something, a physical thing or whatever, like Dustin Hoffman says, he always begins with his shoes or something, to find something. But I don't like it when people go into rehearsals and they're just always wearing tracksuit bottoms and t-shirts, unless the role is like that. But I'm thinking, how can this is Edwardian.
Yeah.
With suddenly, just a different garment, well, you'll sit differently or whatever, you know what I mean? And the same with objects, rather than thinking them as props. They shouldn't be just given to you on the day before you're going to go up in front of an audience or something. You've got to get used to working these things, and I liked that at my desk and the Bill and the things on my desk and my pen, and I had a fountain pen and stuff, but I never used it. But I just thought, well, it's a gift from girlfriend or something, and just to remember stuff. And I was really proud. One thing I'm really proud of it was the last episode I did, Streetwise, and I directed. It was directed by Julian Holmes.
Yeah,
he only ever did one.
That's right. He's had an amazing career, before and since. But yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if the producers were that enamoured with what he did, actually, because he was bringing a different style to it.
What is amazing about that style that he created is very, very handheld, lots of flash cuts and just really playing with the style of the series, which then, 2 years later, every episode looks like that. He was almost ahead of his time.
Yeah.
But to me, it stands out because, I mean, what a performance by you. I mean, it's a fantastic performance. That whole episode, it's one that the fans still talk about.
Do they?
Like if because the Billaton, which is like the best Bill fan site, and they celebrate episodes and they celebrate characters, and like Rod Skase is continually in people's top 5 characters in these polls. I mean, I see them all the time, and people say it still gets me every time Rod Skase walking away in the silent credits, and I think you're the only character they ever did that for.
That's what I was going to say, because I had Simon. I mean, the thing is, doing that episode, things were heightened because I knew it was my last episode, and I was still, whilst I was doing it, I was thinking, do I really want to do this? And I remember John Sim saying, "King hell, man, what are you doing? Get out! You can't do it all." You know, there was that, and other people as well. And having gone off to Australia and did this play, and came back, and the fact that it was Simon Rouse, who I had my last encounter, was the last person when we're standing by the canal.
Yeah.
And then the thing, and I've got one of the new boys, René Zaga. I always want to call him René Zellweger, but René Zaga, right? Just having a little dig at me as I was saying, "You happy now? You happy now?" And I remember I felt really bound with despair to leave it, and also to leave in that way, you know, for a kind of, you know, I'm feeling it now, you know. For that kind of 9-year-old boy to have died as my mismanagement of this case. And believe me, there were times where I really thought, I'd like to go back. With a show like The Bill, I can't say like The Bill, with The Bill, you go in there with 6 months, and the first thing, you just have to see if you can not bump into the furniture and say your line straight and be on time. Yeah, for a young actor drama school, you know. And then you get offered a contract, and then you can start thinking about tips from Chris Ellison or whatever. What's he going to be like? Because you've got to feed the writers, because these writers are busy people. They might be going off to work on Cracker or Between the Lines or the other shows where, you know, but you've got to give them something to base, so you start getting episodes written for you and stuff. And I started going down this sort of thing of sometime, you know, a few things where I wanted to just find the humor in it, but not to play it for laughs, but to find something and play the truth of it, but to find some kind of comic angle. Let's imagine you watch Christopher Walken in something, and it might be, and it's not comedy, whatever, but there's something that you'll laugh at, or something, or Harvey Keitel or Meryl Streep or whoever. They'll do something that's such a human thing that you'll find it amusing, even in terrible tragic scene or whatever. There's something that will be that humanity, the thing that people can relate to, and you find it. And that's, you know, a film like Midnight Run with Robert De Niro, you know, that relationship with Charles Grodin, who died this year or last year.
Yeah, that's right.
I watched it again the other day, and I showed it to my 19-year-old, and he's seen it. He loves that film.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
and Koto, and it's perfect.
When he's on the train, and the guy says to him, "His name's Mosley." I'm Mosley.
No, it's Mosley.
You know, and it's like Yaphet Koto. What? He's just brilliant. I love those guys. And it's got the guy who's the bail bonds guy who popped up in Memento and was,
Matrix, and
and also the terrible character that they had to cut after killing in Sopranos.
Yes.
It's great. And anyway, but that kind of thing, and I was trying to sort of give that in terms of these very straight, or the material that I was being given. And then the writers started to write things which were kind of like comedic. I was thinking, I don't want to go down that road. And that's what started making me think, that's not what I'm trying to do. Because I start trying to write comedy. And there was the thing that, you know, I suppose it was comedic, my relationship with Carrie Peer, with Susie Croft and stuff. But I always wanted to try it. And so the thing about that, Streetwise, was I was thinking maybe if, you know, and it was just pride. I'd made the decision to go. And there were times I was thinking, do I want to go back on this? Do I have the balls, or can I drop the facade of the pride or whatever to actually approach them and say, I'd like to come back? And it wasn't because I was needing to do it because I was out of work or what have you. It's just like I was thinking there was kind of unfinished business with it. And like I said earlier with the play, I've only just feel like maybe I'm starting to just scratch the surface with it, even after 7 years with Rod Skase. I really wanted to know what exactly, so that we actually just sit down with the writers and say, what can we create with this guy? What can this guy be? Will I be staying? Because strictly speaking, if you become promoted, you wouldn't be in the same station. You'd go to a different station because you don't have your peers then resenting you for becoming a sergeant or a DS or whatever. You'd always go on to a different, then maybe you'd come back later. But there were a couple of times I was thinking, I do regret making the decision to leave it.
Well, which is a testament to you and how much you treated it and materials, sincerely. But then, because the show changed so dramatically, like, it's like Greg decided to leave a similar time in a way, perhaps. Yeah. Perhaps you got out at the, because those are halcyon days of the show. That sort of, especially by the 1999, and you got the hour-long formats, or
and I think that cast was very successful with that period, because the thing is, we were coming in hot on the heels of 2 or 3 of the most loved characters, Ellison, Roach, and John Isles. There was a class of the late 80s, early 90s going through Burnside days and stuff. And we had to try and create a new thing. So we had Russell, me, Mary Jo Randall, real deal, proper. Susie, fantastic, really lovely. And of course, Libby Davison. Yeah. And I say Russell and Billy coming in. And we had, and of course, Sean Scott. I loved working with Martin Marquez. I was really sad to go because we got on really well. And, he was my dressing room mate before Russell. I did an episode, it was in the early days of when we'd occasionally have a special, which would be 50 minutes long. And I did an episode, and I'm not thinking it's because I was in the episode. It's not that at all. But I think because there was a curiosity and Bill fans would like to see one which is 50 minutes long. And I happened to be in one of these. But I remember going into Nigel Wilson's office, who was a production coordinator, who didn't have it on a spreadsheet on his computer or whatever. He just had it all around the walls, which is how it's better to do it, because you can, And I saw that the episode that I did with I forget the actress's name, but she ended up in A Toast of London, which I love. But it got about 14.5 million viewers. Madness! I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it?
Honor and Obey, which is the first one where they really played with you and Kerry being at loggerheads and Skase being misogynist. You're like in your mid to late 20s. You got top billing on that episode, and it got 12.5 million. Skase is being his classic. You listen, you might learn something, and Kerry's got that great aside. Oh, I'm sure I will. And he's like,
who says that?
I mean, what did you enjoy about playing him, and how similar was the Iain Fletcher of 1994 to Rod Skase? Where were you and where was he?
Well, I mean, much as Greg says, I was so happy. I mean, it was amazing when I got the role, because I remember lying to the producers about me having a driver's license, right? But actually, I didn't lie, because they said to me, "Can you drive?" And I said, "Yeah, I can drive." Right, and I'd done the screen test, and as had Carl Brinkett, and then I waited, and my agent at the time called me up and said, "It's an offer," right? And I was like, "Michael, that is incredible." So this is all within sort of 5 or 6 hours, this little thing. So I got the news, and I'd got it, and then my agent said, "Just one thing. They asked you about your driving." And the blood just left my head and just drained out through my feet. And I'm just there suddenly. And my girlfriend at the time was looking at me, and I'm on the phone. And I said, "I don't have a license." And he said, "You told me you can drive." I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'll call you back. This is my agent, right?" And then I got a phone call from Richard Hanford, who was the Red Unit producer, who was, right-hand man to Michael Chapman. He called me up and said, "You told us that you could drive." And I said, "Well, I can drive." And he said, "You don't have a license?" I said, "No, I don't have a license." And he goes, "Oh, I see what you've done there." And I said, "I'm actually in the middle of having driving lessons," with Francesca looking at me saying, "What? straight away, right? And I'm like, okay. And he said, there shouldn't be a problem. I'll have a chat with Michael, but I don't think it'll be a problem. It's not about whether you can drive or not. I'll get back to you. I'm on the bed, rocking backwards and forwards with Francesca, thinking, what have I done? I've lost this job. I've lost it, right? Anyway, in that time, it was about 3 or 4 hours. He said, I'd call you back in about 20. He said, I'll call you back 20 minutes, something like that. I'll have a word with Michael, right? So anyway, 4 hours later, once we've already organised a whole bunch of driving lessons for that week and a test, thanks to a cancellation, we'd got it all sorted. I was driving with Francesca, my partner. Calls back at around about 5:30. And he said, Iain, it's absolutely fine. We look forward to seeing you next week. I've got the thing, right?
Oh.
Right. What I didn't know is when Richard Hampford put the phone down, he was in the office with Michael Chapman, who was just sitting back. And he said, what did he say? He said, you can't drive. You can't drive. What have you told him? He said, well, it's going to be all right. And he said, don't call him until the end of the day. Let's teach him a lesson.
He was a car running. Michael Chapman. He's still alive. I haven't been able to. Oh. Yeah.
I'd like to speak to him, yeah.
He famously, on the very first block of the bill in 1984, called Derek Cossey into his office.
Derek Cossey, I know, yeah.
He picked up an axe that he'd been given from a fireman's award and put an axe through the videotape and said, I don't like this episode, remake it.
Yeah. You know, that might have been one I was in.
Oh, no. That was it.
Well, we did do an episode. I did an episode with Greg, right? Where we had a guy with a gun in a house who did a scene with a fish tank, directed by Derek Lister.
Out on a Limb, that episode.
Out on a Limb.
Yeah.
Now, Out on a Limb, that was a remake of an episode where Michael Chapman didn't like the actor who, as a Geordie actor, came in, who did it.
Oh, wow.
And we shot the whole thing. He didn't like it. And it was never shown. So if that's knocking about, it'd be worth seeing. And it's the same script, but he didn't like the actor.
Yeah, he's done that in 1991 with, it was a Jeff Stewart storyline where Hollis is trapped in a freezer with a gunman, and the actor had played it really intensely, and Michael Chapman said, no, he's too serious, cast someone funny, and they put Roger Lloyd Pack in that role.
Oh, really?
And made it a lighter episode, even though this guy was a killer. That isn't revealed for the end. That was kind of like the punchline of the episode.
A similar kind of storyline, because we're trapped. The thing about the episode, apart from a few Trudy or Tony or whoever on our radios, it doesn't leave the house. It's very claustrophobic. A similar kind of situation with me and Greg. So we become hostages. And the edit, I didn't really like the edit, actually. But and sometimes edits are really kind to you, and you just think, and the director said, no, just leave it, that'll be fine, we'll sort it in the edit. And you see it back and you think, I'm glad they did. I've done a whole block of episodes and things, and we've been doing long days and 4 or 5 shot over a few weeks, whatever. And I suddenly had a window of like 4 or 5 days where I wasn't shooting anything. Now, strictly speaking, you shouldn't go anywhere on holiday. You're not going to take a holiday. You're not going to leave the country. So anyway, I said to Nigel Wilson, our production coordinator, I said, look, I'm going to go up to the lakes with an old friend of mine to camp for 4 nights. I'm going to go up on the Monday, come back. And he said, well, I'll contact you if there's anything, if there's, So we take off. We drive up, as English people do. You go up at about 2 o'clock in the morning and drive up to the distance. This is what Bill Bryson says, the travel writer. He says, English people, when they're going to do on a long journey, they get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and leave, to go the distance that most Americans will drive to get a takeaway. You know what I mean? And it's like to drive up to the Lake District from London. We got our tents and stuff. We'd had like 2-3 days up there having a lovely time. And we were we stayed camped next to Coniston Water, where Donald Camel died, flipped out in the Bluebird. And see, I always have to give all the detail. Anyway, we're walking around. We've got our guitars with us and going to have a nice time, if you know what I mean. And do some walking and walk up Scarfell or whatever, do all these things and walk around the lakes and eat some lovely food and drink some wine and this and the other. And we walked into Cockermouth to buy some Kendal mint cake, and also wanted to send a couple of postcards. And all these people in Cockermouth were looking at me and saying, whispering and this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, well, and Sean saying, do you get this a lot? I said, well, yeah, fine. No big, I know, it's fine. Anyway, I went into the post office, and this pair of elderly ladies, like the two elderly ladies in 40 Towers, he said, oh, you should be at work, you should. And I said, well, even Rod Skase has to take a few days off now and then, and I went off, and they were very kind, and they said, no, you really should. And I said, yeah, I know, I should. Walked up the street, and this old guy came up to me. He said, what you doing? You should be at work. You're needed back at... And I said, what do you mean? He said, I've just heard on the radio that you should be at work. I immediately went, I don't have a mobile phone. Oh, no, I did have a mobile phone, but I had no service. I had, it dropped out. I didn't have any service. Yeah, I was at mountains, I called up Nigel Wilson, and he said to me, where the F are you? And I said, I'm in the lakes. I told you. He said, you're supposed to be down doing a reshoot. And I said, well, nobody told me. He said, well, Michael Chapman didn't like the actor in those 3 scenes that you did at the pool club or whatever, and we're going to be reshooting them tomorrow at 4:00.
No.
And so what happened, Nigel Wilson knew that I was going up to the lakes. He'd got in touch with BBC Radio Cumbria, who every half hour or whatever put out a little bulletin saying, if any of you see Rod Skase walking around wherever. And this old guy told me because he heard it on the radio. And I said to my mate Sean, I said, right, we're going back, we've got to go now. And it was actually that morning I just got in the car and just drove straight down to South London, so 5.5 hours or whatever it was. Literally, as I was getting out of the car, out of the front door came a black Labrador, followed by its owner, Michael Chapman.
Wow.
And I was like, shh. And as I walked towards him, he said, so, I hear you've been in the Lake District. I said, yes, I have. And he goes, how's the weather? I'm going up there myself. And that's all he said. Anyway, and with Bosun wagging his tail and sniffing me, and off he went. I said, well, yeah, it's okay. You're going to have a nice time, I'm sure. Anyway, I went straight to set, and all I had to do was just shoot the back of my head in 3 different angles with a new actor, because they were just doing all the other angles and stuff without that actor, to save money rather than doing a full thing. So anyway, but that was just quite, and that was when I realised that actually I'm quite a few people know me across the land, and that was probably about 97, 98. There was a missing persons report on BBC Radio, and Nigel would have loved it being on the radio, talking to the, in the morning, what have you, and they would say, and also it was in the local Cumbria Cockermouth news or whatever it was, and that was weird, that was going up to the lakes. I was up the lakes the other day, going up to the same lake.
How about going to France with Simon Rouse? I bet that was an experience.
Yeah, that was a lovely time. I like these big prawns.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I like these big prawns. They're langoustine. That was such a lovely. I don't know if it worked, to be honest. I mean, I kind of, the thing about, not that I put them in the same category at all, but when you see episodes of EastEnders where they take place in Spain or something, it doesn't work. And I just wondered if it did really work. It was a lovely thing to do, and we were working with a lovely director, Chris Lovett, and it was a lovely cast, and I had a real crush on the girl in it that I had in which I wanted to ask for a drink, and she I said, do you want to come for a drink with me? And she came back with some glasses, and it was just too much for me to handle, whilst Meadows is having his way. It was great fun. It really, it is a lovely episode. I don't know. I mean, did the Bill regular watchers, did they like it? Did it work? Did they appreciate it? Yeah.
It's a very highly regarded episode.
Really?
I just enjoyed it again yesterday. And
did you? Okay.
Yeah, I treated myself, because my mum and dad live in the Vendée region of France now,
okay.
So it was.
I remember the kind of little subplot that everyone wanted to go over there.
Yeah.
And Sean Scott, Deacon, really wanted to go over there, and he couldn't. And Simon Rouse, Paul's ranks.
Yeah.
And then when I I pretend I can speak a bit of French or something.
That's
and then
it,
when we're about to get in the car and stuff, and it was a genuine laugh, actually. I remember when I think George Rossi, maybe Greg or something, was saying,
and Billy, yeah.
We didn't know you could speak French. And I said, no, I can't, I've got a clue.
Hello, this is Ben Payton, and you have been listening to the Bill Podcast, produced and presented by Oliver Crocker, with special thanks to Iain Fletcher. Co-produced by Ben Adams, Sarah Kuiper, Malcolm McLeod, Alex Mockler, Laura Pinney-Fay, and Simon Wolfe. Executive produced by Ben Ashmore, Daniel Christopher, Alana Dewar, Andrew Dyack, Paul Dunn, Dan Evans, George Fairbrother, Luke Hegarty, Edward Kellett, James Ledane, Simon McGoldrick, Lucy McNeil, Gary Moncur, Stuart and Jen Morris, Claire Norbury, Justin Pitt, Tom Sherrington, Angel Stannard, Patrick Stratford, Michael Weil and Sarah Wendt. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, McGoldrickWatchRepairs.com and Misty Moon Events. For over 60 hours of exclusive The Bill-related content, including reunion highlights, reaction videos, cast and crew commentaries, pilgrimage location videos, off-the-beat bonus podcasts, and much more, join the investigation from £2.49 a month at patreon.com/The Bill Podcast.